Welcome back, everybody, to another edition of Fireside Chats. Now, our last one was on Star Wars Skeleton Crew. Go check that one out. This one, however, is going to be about X-Men 97 versus Batman Caped Crusader. A good old-fashioned Marvel versus DC Fireside Chat. MarcTheTruth is joining me, and I need to get his opinions on the 90s series. There was the 90s X-Men and the 90s Batman cartoon. Now, in my opinion, I always felt that those cartoons, you couldn't even compare them. I always felt that even though the X-Men one was good, Batman the Animated Series was on another level. And I just never felt that the X-Men or any of the old Marvel cartoons ever lived up to the DC ones. They always felt outclassed until maybe more recently. But Mark, how did you feel about the 90s series when you compare the two?
I'm in the same boat. Like, I agree. I feel like, Marvel, their cartoons were good, but DC was always that one step better with animated stuff. And I feel like now that is completely changing, and DC is kind of going backwards with animation and Marvel's going forward. So as far as like the original 90s X-Men cartoon, I thought it was good. I thought it was fun. But I felt like the Batman one had that darker tone and was much more, I don't want to say edgy is the right term, but it hit that, like, crack open a box of cereal in the morning, throw on cartoons. I'm putting on Batman over the animated 90s X-Men series.
Yeah, I always felt that way too. The storytelling of Batman the Animated Series was just so good. It was a cut above most cartoons, especially at that time. And it's one of those series that is just special in general. And even though X-Men was good, I think I talked about it on our X-Men 97 Nerdcast. I always felt that the X-Men and just the Marvel cartoons, even like Spider-Man and stuff, they always felt too fast-paced. The animated series of Batman always had a nice slow build. It treated kids like they were adults. And that was what I liked about it. So now let's get into which revival was better, because there is X-Men 97, which is a sequel to the original 90s X-Men series, and then Batman Caped Crusader, which is a reboot or a revival of the 90s Batman the Animated Series. Now, Mark, as you brought up, more recently, especially on Disney Plus, the Marvel cartoons have been getting a lot better. If you listen to our Caped Crusader Nerdcast, which you should, you kind of already know which show Mark is going to pick. But for the sake of the Fireside Chat, Mark, give your thoughts on which series particularly you thought was better than the other.
Plot twist. I thought Batman was better.
Really?
No, not at all.
Okay, I didn't think so.
No, I just did something with the animation. Like, the story of the Batman show was good. They took, villains and portrayed them in that time frame, which is great. It worked. It's just something about the animation is what threw me off from that show. I think that's what it boils down to, is just the animation of that show just could not catch my eye, as opposed to the X-Men 97 reboot that, story was great in that as well. It's just the animation was a lot more catching for me. Not that that's something that draws me into a show. Like, there's shows that I watch that are terrible animation, but they're good. It's just I lean heavy more towards the 97 reboot. Not because it was more colorful and the animation was better. It's just the story made more sense. The pacing was better. I feel like they took their pacing that they used to have and took the DC formula for pacing and put that show out, and everything was perfect. As opposed to the Batman one, where I feel like they took back on the pacing and just kind of took a step back with their animation.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with you on the animation aspect of things. X-Men 97, 100%, like, it had that spirit of the 90s look in it, and that was what made it really special. Like, it was a modern take, but still felt very 90s, and it still paid tribute to the original show, which, if you listen to our Nerdcast on Caped Crusader, was one of the things that I complained about with the Batman series, was that I felt the animation didn't pay homage and tribute to what the 90s series did, and how they used black paper to draw on to give it that dark look and tone and feel for Gotham. This series didn't really have that. Now, I know these days it's digital animation, but I'm sure there's ways that you can find a way to darken the background. Bruce Timm's new work has been too bright and cheery looking for me, even starting all the way back in Justice League. And I just prefer that dark tone that he took for Gotham in the Batman animated series and the Batman Beyond cartoon. And that was heavily missing for me in Caped Crusader.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like, it wasn't that the Caped Crusader was bright and colorful like X-Men was. It was just the shades were just too bright for what they were.
Yeah, the shades were too bright. The characters were blocky looking and uncanny valley, like you said before. X-Men 97, it needs to be colorful because it's the X-Men. It is a colorful series. It always has been. But story-wise, I think it would be crazy to say that Batman Caped Crusader was better than X-Men 97. It's not even in the same realm, because here's the thing. With X-Men 97, it explores complex themes of relationships, depression, racism, theology, genocide, and it does it in thought-provoking ways. Batman, for as good as that show was, in my opinion, I liked it, but all it really did was explore the theme of corruption, and the theme of corruption is throughout and present in most Batman stories. It really wasn't anything new. It just had a 1940s like flair to it.
Yeah, and with the stories that X-Men 97 touched on, it also did it in a way where if a kid was to watch it, it was still fun and bright and like enjoyable for a kid, because they're not going to pick up on those nuances. But with the Caped Crusader, like, I don't know, I feel like that show was geared towards adults and it kind of missed that mark for adults. And then I feel like a kid's going to put that on and not really enjoy it. They're not going to relate to anything.
No, Caped Crusader was definitely made for adults. And if I was a kid and I watched it, I don't know how much I would have really cared for it, because you could tell it was more geared for a mature audience. Whereas, like you said, X-Men 97, the story was very mature, but it still kind of was made for everybody. X-Men 97 was just better overall and in almost every way. And you could say, how could I say that the corruption versus the X-Men, even though in X-Men all those themes are explored in most of their stories too, in 97 they adapted old comics and stories that we've yet to see in media and entertainment, and they found new and creative ways to weave it together. Whereas in Batman, even though it had this 1940s flair and tribute, it was still somewhat the same stories we've seen before, like Two-Face, for example.
Yeah, they just added a twist to the 40s theme.
Now, something I will say is that both shows did a good job of balancing its cast of characters. Obviously, you have all the X-Men, and all of them had different stories weaved throughout the 10 episodes. Whereas Batman Caped Crusader, same thing. I mean, it was less characters, but, the Gordons, Montoya, Batman, Harvey, they were all present throughout the story and built up to the last episode, kind of like X-Men. So I do think it utilized both of its cast of characters well.
Yeah, I agree with that. And with X-Men, it's very easy for a character to get introduced and kind of be one and done, but they all kind of had their full circle moment throughout the show.
I mean, let's be honest. Two-Face's death was good, but it was not as emotional as Gambit's. Another thing I wanted to talk about too really quick was the music. X-Men 97 soundtrack was amazing. Whereas Batman's, we didn't talk about the music in our Nerdcast, but it's because it was kind of forgettable. It really didn't add any layers to the show and was definitely a massive downgrade from Danny Elfman's legendary score from the 90s series that everybody knows and is still kind of the base for Batman's soundtrack to this day.
Right. And music in a show is part of what builds tension or suspicion or certain plot points that you're trying to portray. And with Batman, I feel like, they could have had no music and I wouldn't have known the difference. But with 97, all of their music kind of had its certain point where it made sense.
Yeah, for sure. And basically, for me, if I had to compare, if we're talking about the 90s series, Batman the Animated Series, no question, is better than X-Men. But X-Men 97, I think, surpassed the 90s X-Men series by far, while Caped Crusader didn't even scratch the surface of the 90s Batman Animated Series, in my opinion. It was good, but just if you put the two in front of me, I would choose the 90s series every day.
And with the 90s series, it's, With X-Men 97, that is, you can watch the original and throw that one on and continue. In the case of the Cape Crusader, it's a completely different time frame. So like you can't watch the two and have it be a continuation, which is fine. But then it doesn't touch back on that original story. Like it's just not there.
Yeah, I still think they would have been better off doing a sequel to the animated series of Batman instead of doing this like 1940s reboot. I don't like to give like review scores, but if I had to rate or score, I'd probably say Cape Crusader, in my opinion, depending on the episode, was about a 6 or a 7, whereas X-Men 97 was a solid 9 or even a 10 at times.
See, if I was going to do that, I almost never rate anything a 10. Like, I'll rate food, and people will be like, oh, this was a 10 out of 10. I'm like, no, I don't scale out of 10. It's out of 5. And I would say it was about a 3. So for the sake of this, I would say X-Men 97 was about 6 or 7 most of the time. And the Cape Crusader was probably a 4 or 5.
Wow, a 97 only got a 6 or a 7.
Just with the way I rate things, nothing will ever get a 9 or 10. Like I wouldn't even give Star Wars, which is my favorite series of anything, I wouldn't give certain things 9 or 10s that people would.
For me, X-Men 97, because of all of the complex and amazing themes that it explored, for a cartoon, that's one of those things you don't see that often. And it's why I say that I personally think X-Men 97 in general is an important show just for people to watch. Whereas Cape Crusader is kind of one that I don't know if I would, unless you're a huge Bruce Timm fan, I don't think I would recommend anybody to go watch it.
No. And with the 97 show, it's one of those shows, like it could be the plan that cartoons, superhero cartoons, at least for that sake, take going forward. Where like you touch on real life topics, but relate it to characters amongst that comic book or that story.
Yeah, it's the type of cartoon that, for people who don't watch cartoons, I would recommend give it a shot. Sometimes people are like curmudgeons. They're like, I'm not watching cartoons. They're for kids. For me, I've never looked at it that way because I know how complex some of the stories can get. And even for people like that, I would turn on X-Men 97 and show it to them.
And tell them, look at it in this perspective. Like, don't look at it for like the colors and like the characters that you're seeing. Like, look at what they're touching on.
Yeah, for sure. That's really all I have to say about it. X-Men 97 was the clear winner across the board for both of us. Even though I did like Batman Cape Crusader for the most part, it was good, but X-Men 97 was like great to like amazing for me at times. So it's not a comparison. And now, like you said, DC's animated universe has kind of fallen off. A lot of their new stuff, even their films, has not really been that good. Even someone like me who used to watch all of the animated films right when they came out has fallen behind because I haven't really liked the new style. But Marvel, on the other hand, has really stepped up their game. And I think X-Men 97 was a cornerstone for them. I think they're going to start utilizing what they did there for most of their cartoons.
Yeah, like that was their stepping stone to show like, all right, we're going to take over animated cartoons and kind of push DC aside.
And that's not good for DC because they're already been pushed aside in the live action department. And
they used to be the better option for cartoons.
For the last like 20 years, they were until more recently, until like the 2020 decade, I would say. But yeah, that's really all I have left to say about it. Mark, do you have any final thoughts?
The only thing I would say is if you agree with me for the Uncanny Valley aspect of Cape Crusader, let me know.
And all I have really left to say is if they reboot Batman Beyond, make it look like the 90s series, damn it.
Yeah, don't change it.
But yeah, that's it. That was our X-Men 97 versus Cape Crusader. Which revival is better? Fireside Chat. We hoped you guys enjoyed it. If you did, we'd appreciate a like, comment, and subscription. You can also check us out at FireTruthCast on Spotify, X, Instagram, TikTok. And go ahead, tell us which series you thought was better. Did you think 97 with its complex themes was better? Or did you like the corruption aspect of Batman Cape Crusader and the nostalgia factor of it? Either way, I thought they were both good cartoons. And it's nice to see superhero cartoons making a return in the 2020s decade. If you want to hear more about animated superhero shows or films, we'll definitely dive more into them at some point. So stick around, and we'll see you guys on the next one.